Hey guys, welcome to this week's tutorial. Today we are making a DIY slip dress cut on bias. Now, I have noticed the DIY slip dress trend. It is huge. And of course I decided to DIY this look for you guys because oh my God, who wouldn't want to DIY this? It looked amazing. I was so glad with the outcome of the dress. I mean, even from the colors I chose for the fabric, and I really hope you guys just pick great colors that really represent you and just, you know, brings you out. I'm really excited about this project. I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and I can't wait to see your results. If you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please make sure to join the Soooo Addicts family by clicking that red subscribe button, and let's get started. Starting off, you want to get about 3 yards of a satin or silk fabric or something that's just lightweight with a little bit of sheen. Then you want to get a 20 to 22 inch invisible zipper. So getting started, you want to grab a nice piece of paper. As you guys can see, I have a drafted paper here, and actually fold that in half. Now we're going to get started drafting our front pattern. So I'm drawing a straight line here just as a baseline to get started. Then we're going to identify how deep we want our neckline to be. So you want to measure from your collarbone to basically how deep you want your neckline to be. So I'm making mine about 7 inches deep. So I'm measuring from that straight line 7 inches down. So you want to get these marks and then connect your lines together to form a straight line. After doing that, we're going to come out at the top of our line 4 inches. So that you're going to connect to this point here, creating a nice straight line. Now we're going to identify how wide we want our bust line to be. So you want to take your bust measurement and divide by 4 to identify how wide your bust line is going to be. So as you can see, I'm marking about 9 inches here. So I do have my bust measurement, as you guys can see, and now we're going to connect these 2 points together. Before we do that though, I'm also going to lower that bust seam about 1 inch. This should provide some extra room under your arms. So we're just going to connect these 2 points together. Now we're going to identify our waist measurement. So you want to measure from how deep you wanted your neckline to go all the way to your waist measurement. So mine was about 9 inches. This is where our waist is going to be. So again, I'm just drawing a straight line across my waist, and then on that line we're going to measure our actual waist measurement. So you're going to take your waist measurement again and divide that by 4. So we do want to add a 1 inch extra allowance here just so it keeps a nice loose shape. So figure out those points and then connect them like I've done here. Now we're going to move ahead to the hips. So the hips, you want to measure from your waist measurement to the highest point of your hip. So this measurement varies for certain people. It can be about 7 to 8 or 9 inches. So again, take the measurement from your waist all the way to the highest point of your hip. And then you have that measurement and square off the lines like I've done here. Now on that hip line, we're going to measure our actual hip size. So again, you want to take your hip measurement and divide that by 4 and add an extra seam allowance just to keep the dress nice and loose. Then you want to connect those 2 lines together. Now we're going to identify our hemline. So you want to identify how long you want your dress to be. So I'm measuring from my waistline to the bottom about 28 inches. So I'm just marking that 28 inches, and then you want to square that line off. After connecting these 2 points together, you also want to extend your hip line here all the way down to the bottom. So as you can see, I'm just making sure to follow the direction from my waist to my hip point, just like that. And I'm just following that straight line all the way to the bottom of my hemline. After this, one thing we do want to do for the waist, we want to make sure that our waist is actually kind of curved and not pointed the way we drafted in the first place. So as you can see, I'm just finishing up those lines, making sure it's actually nicely curved instead of a sharp point. Now for our armhole here, we're also going to lower this just a little bit. So we're just making a nice curve instead of a straight line. Then we're going to proceed to add our seam allowances. So you want to add your seam allowances all around your pattern except the neckline section and the armhole section. So I'm adding a 1/2 inch seam allowance all around, and you can add about 1 inch at the bottom or 3/4 at the bottom depending on your preference. Now we're going to go ahead and identify our slip point. So this is optional, you don't have to do this, but I'm measuring 12 inches from the bottom, as you guys can see, and this is how high I want my slit to be. You can make yours as high as you want or as low as you want. So after that, we're going to cut out our front pattern. Now moving on to the back is relatively the same as the front. So I do have a straight line drawn here as a baseline to get started. Now you want to measure those 9 inches, which is your bust measurement divided by 4, which was 9 inches on the front pattern. So we're identifying that 9 inch again. And then I'm measuring to my waist point, so which was 9 inches, just like our front, and I'm drawing that straight line across. And I'm identifying my waist point right there again, which was my waist divided by 4. And I'm also identifying my highest hip point again, which I'm drawing and marking those lines. You also want to identify your hips, which was your hips divided by 4. Basically the same thing for the front. We're also identifying how long we want our pattern to be, and you're going to square these lines off and also extend your hip just like this all the way to the bottom of your hemline, basically just like we did for the front. The only difference is the shape of the back neckline or the back line. So I'm also identifying my slit, as you guys can see, and now we're actually going to drop our back line about 1 inch. So I do like my back line to be curved a little bit, but you can definitely leave yours straight if that's your preference, but I dropped mine just about 1 inch. Again, you do not want to add any seam allowance to your back line, which is going to add seam allowances to the sides. And I also forgot to curve my waistline for my back as well, so do not forget to curve your waistline just like I've done. And then you want to proceed to cut out your pattern. So after cutting out your back and front pattern, they should look like this. So I have my back pattern here, and I also have my front pattern. So after cutting out my front pattern, I noticed I didn't really like how long my bust front section was. Like this triangle section was a little too long and pointy. So I just decided to fold over that edge just about 1 inch just to reduce how pointy my bust section was. But if you do not like how pointy yours was, you can definitely do this. But if you do, you can just omit the step. So after doing that, then we're going to proceed to drawing our grain lines. Now, since we're cutting this unbiased, we do have to draw our grain lines at a 45-degree angle. Regular grain lines are perpendicular to our folded edge, but since this is a 45-degree angle, we want to make sure that it's diagonal to the folded edge. So I do have this ruler, which is shaped in form of an L, and it really helps identifying those lines. So you want to place a second ruler, if you do have this L ruler, right in the middle and just drawing that 45-degree angle. If you do not have this L ruler, then you would need about 3 rulers to identify your 95-degree angle. So you want to place that first ruler right at the edge of the fold, place the other ruler perpendicular to that previous ruler, and then place a nice straight ruler in the middle of these 2 points, and then drawing a diagonal line. So you see how that's a 45-degree angle within that 90-degree angle? Then you can just open up your pattern and extend that line so it creates a nice diagonal. Now we're going to proceed to the cutting process. So we usually cut our fabric on fold, but this time we're actually going to lay our fabric nice and wide. So once you have your fabric laid out, you're going to grab your pattern and make sure to open up your pattern so you can see all the edges. Now, to place this on our fabric, we want to make sure that this diagonal 45-degree line is perpendicular to our selvage. This is how you want to place your pattern so you can cut it out unbiased. So you want to make sure that this 45-degree line is perpendicular to the selvage of your fabric. Now, a good way of doing this is I always like to measure my distance, making sure that I'm pinning from the top to the bottom. So I measure 28 inches out from that point to my selvage, and then I'm making sure that it's also 28 inches all throughout the line. So as you can see, when it's 28 inches, I'm moving that, making sure that it's nice and perpendicular to my selvage. Once you have this all pinned out, then you want to cut it out. After cutting out your pattern, you should have your front and your back. So do not also forget to mark your slip points. I put my slit on the left side of my dress. Moving on to the sewing process. So to get started with this, you want to cut out two 1 by 20 inch strips. So the strips are going to be used to finish up the edge of our back line and our front neckline. So as you can see, I'm pinning this strip just at the edge of my back line, and we're going to be sewing this on the sewing machine at 1/4 of an inch. So you want to pin one strip on your back line and the other strip to your front neckline, just like this. So I'm placing that front strip right at the edge of my front neckline, and we're also going to be sewing this on the sewing machine in 1/4 of an inch. After sewing this down 1/4 of an inch, then we're going to be folding that other side also 1/4 and folding again to cover up all that seam allowance. So I went ahead and actually pressed and fold this on the iron, as you can see. So I folded one side 1/4 of an inch, and then we're going to fold that just right over the seam allowance 1/4 of an inch again to finish up our edges, and we're going to top stitch that, catching the back. So as you can see, I folded that and I'm just top stitching from the front, and you want to make sure that you're catching the back when you're sewing from your top to the bottom. This is going to finish up the edge of your neckline nicely. So it kind of forms a bias tape for your seam basically. So you want to repeat this process for your front as well. Now when you finish up your front, we're going to sew down the edge right here. So that V line, we're just going to fold that over, and we're just going to sew that down just a little bit, maybe about 1/4 of an inch in. So you want to sew that down diagonally at the edge, just like this, and this allows your neckline to lay nice and flat. Now we've successfully finished up the edges of our back line and our front neckline. Now we're going to finish up the edges of our armhole. So for this, you want to grab two strips that are 1 inch wide and 30 inches long. So for this strip, we're going to start with this edge from our side seams and walk all the way up to the edge of our neckline, but you want to have that extra strip of fabric remaining. So again, just like we see here, we were able to finish up our armhole, but we have that extra fabric extended, and you just want to make sure to top stitch that extra fabric and finish it up just like this one. So after finishing up your edges and the strips, they should look like that. Now we're going to attach our front and back together. So I placed my back and front together, right sides to right sides. Now I'm measuring the point for my zipper. So I'm just measuring about 18 inches down. Now this is where my zipper is going to go. And you want to connect from that zipper point all the way to your slip point. So that is where we're going to sew at 1/2 inch. And then the other side, you want to connect from top to bottom. So after attaching your seams, it should look like this. I did go ahead and attach my zipper. As you guys can see, I have my slit openings, I have my zipper openings, and I also have the other side attached from the top to the bottom. And then to finish your zipper here, you want to make sure to just fold that extra zipper flap under the seam allowance, just like that, and you can just top stitch it at the front. I do have an invisible zipper tutorial on YouTube, so make sure to check that out. Shows you the full process. Once you're done with that, then you want to make sure to attach your straps. Now I do encourage you to try on your dress so you can identify how long you want your straps to be, but for this we're going to be sewing this down first, as you can see, and then flipping that over, and then we're going to sew this down again. So you just want to make sure to hide that seam and raw edge. So after sewing that down, you should have your straps locked in. Then we're going to proceed to finishing up our hemline. Hemline is relatively simple. You just want to make sure to fold that over twice and top stitch this down. So I do encourage you to pin and actually press this before you sew it down. So after finishing up the hemline, then we're going to go ahead and finish it up our slit line. So a slit line, same process. You want to fold this over twice, again making sure that you are following the straight edge for your slit. So you don't want to make sure to fold too over or fold too less, making sure that you're following that nice straight line for your slit, sewing from the bottom all the way to the top and back down. So I sewed my slit, as you guys can see. I do have that edge going from the bottom all the way across here and all the way back down. After that process, you have successfully completed a beautiful slip dress. end of this tutorial. I was so happy with the outcome of this video. The dress just looked beautiful and I'm so excited for you guys to make it. I mean, just with the fabric choice and everything, I mean, please make sure to pick the color that just most represents you. I mean, this dress is fun. You can wear it out to brunch, just like a nice lunch date, just a great day out, really. So I'm so happy you guys were able to join me on another episode of Soooo Addicts. If you really liked this video, please give this video a big thumbs up. If you have any questions for me, please scroll down and leave me a couple of words. I'm definitely looking at those as well. And if you make any of my DIYs with this tutorial, please tag me. I want to see your images. I want to see your beautiful photos at DamiaD9KX on Instagram. And of course, if you haven't joined the family yet, please make sure to scroll down and subscribe to the Soooo Addicts channel so you can see more awesome videos from me. And I hope to catch you guys next week.